The echo of ancient voices. Myth or fact? Picture this, a world born from the primeval cosmic egg, cracked open to reveal the sky above and the earth below. Or imagine the entire universe held within the sprawling branches of a colossal oak tree, roots delving deep into the underworld, its crown touching the heavens. These are not mere fairy tales, but fragments of profound belief. They were the bedrock of how early Slavic peoples understood existence. They sound curious to modern ears. Yet for generations, these narratives were as real as the soil they tilled, and as real as the rivers they fished. These stories were their science, their history, their moral compass. A tapestry of tribes. So who precisely were these people we call the Slavs? It is a far more complex question than it might first appear. We must first dispense with the idea of a single, monolithic empire or nation. The early Slavs, flourishing from roughly the 6th century onwards, were a mosaic of countless tribes, often distinguished by the lands they inhabited. Names like the Antes, the Sklaveni, the Drevlians, the people of the forest, the Polans, the people of the field surface in the Old Chronicles. They were not a unified political entity, but a sprawling family of peoples bound by a common linguistic root and a shared cultural and spiritual framework. Their world was one of small villages, often nestled in river valleys or clearings carved from the immense forests that blanketed Eastern Europe. Daily life was an intimate, unending dance with the rhythms of nature. These were, above all, agricultural communities. Their lives revolved around the planting and harvesting of grains, like millet, wheat, rye, a cycle that dictated their festivals, their rituals, and their very survival. Whispers in the woods. To step into the spiritual world of the early Slavs is to enter a landscape alive with divine forces. Theirs was not a religion confined to temples and holy books. It was woven into the very fabric of the natural world. At the zenith of this vibrant pantheon stood a caste of powerful gods who governed the fundamental forces of the cosmos. The most prominent and widely attested of these was Perun, the mighty god of thunder and lightning. Imagined as a formidable, axe-wielding figure, he roared across the sky in his chariot, a protector of warriors and a bringer of the life-giving rain. He represented order, justice, and the celestial law of the heavens. In eternal opposition to Perun was his chthonic rival, Veles. Where Perun ruled the sky, Veles held dominion over the watery underworld, the damp earth, and the wild, untamed wilderness. The mythical conflict between Perun and Veles was a central drama in Slavic cosmology. Unlike the Greeks with their Parthenon or the Egyptians with their Karnak, the early Slavs did not build grand stone temples to honor their gods. Their cathedrals were the ancient forests, their altars the great moss-covered boulders, and their sanctuaries the sacred groves. Worship was an organic, earthbound practice. A particularly large and ancient oak tree, with its deep roots and sky-reaching branches, was a natural axis mundi, a connection between the earthly world and Perun's celestial realm. Rivers were seen as life-giving veins of Mother Earth, and offerings were often cast into their waters to appease Veles or the local water spirits. Certain hills or mountains were also deemed holy. Where constructed places of worship did exist, they were typically made of wood. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of circular enclosures, with one or more wooden idols placed at the center. The primary chronicle lists wooden statues of Perun with a silver head and a golden mustache. These sites were likely maintained by a priestly class, known as the Volkvi. Attempting to untangle fact from myth in the story of the early Slavs is like trying to separate the threads of an ancient tapestry. The two are so intricately woven together that to pull one out is to risk unraveling the whole picture. The myths, as we have seen, are not historical records in the way we understand them today. They are not concerned with dates, chronologies, verifiable events. Instead, they are profound expressions of a worldview. Stories that encode cultural values, stories that explain natural phenomena, stories that provide a sense of identity and place in the cosmos. The facts, on the other hand, come to us from two primary sources: archaeology, foreign writers. Archaeology unearths the material reality of Slavic life. A hoard of iron axe heads tells us about metalworking technology and hints at preparation for conflict or at forest clearing. Excavating a settlement of sunken featured huts reveals architecture and community size. Pollen analysis of ancient soil can tell us what crops they grew. Written accounts provide another layer, but one that must be read with extreme caution. The arrival of Christianity in the Slavic lands between the 9th and 12th centuries was not simply a change of religion, it was a seismic cultural shift that profoundly and permanently altered the Old World. This process was rarely a simple, peaceful conversion. It was often driven from the top down by princes and rulers like Vladimir the Great of Kyiv, Mieszko I of Poland, who saw political and strategic advantages in aligning with Byzantium and the West. Christian missionaries and priests actively worked to dismantle the pagan worldview. Sacred groves were cut down. Churches were often deliberately built upon former shrines. Wooden idols of the old gods were torn down, dragged through the streets, and unceremoniously thrown into rivers, as famously happened to the statue of Perun in Kyiv. The Volkvi, the pagan priests, were persecuted, and the old rituals were condemned as demonic worship. The primary chronicle describes these events with a triumphant tone, portraying the conversion as a victory of light over darkness, a narrative that served the agenda of the new Christian ruling class. Yet, old beliefs are notoriously resilient. Instead of vanishing, they merged with the new in syncretism, devoevery, dual faith. The great gods found new homes in Christian saints: Perun with the prophet Elijah, Veles with Saint Blaise, Mokosh within veneration of the Virgin Mary. Festivals persisted, Kolyada absorbed into Christmas, Maslenitsa into the week before Lent. The lesser spirits stayed in folk memory, the domovoi at home, the leshi in forests, the rusalki in rivers. In this way, the soul of the old world was not destroyed but disguised, its echoes living on in songs, fairy tales, and traditions. So we return to our initial question: did the Slavs come from here? In a way, the myths provide the most profound answer. They show us a people who were not merely passing through a landscape, but were born of it, their beliefs and identity inextricably linked to the forests, rivers, soil of Eastern Europe. The stories of Perun Veles Mokosh are more than just forgotten tales of defunct gods. They are a window into the soul of a people, revealing how they grappled with the great mysteries of existence, how they structured their society, and how they found meaning and courage in a world that was often harsh and unforgiving. By studying them, we do not just learn about the past, we learn about the enduring human need to create stories to make sense of our place in the universe. They form the deep cultural bedrock of many modern nations. Place names, classic literature, folk melodies, and national art haunted by ancient beliefs. These myths are not dead artifacts, they are living cultural DNA. They encourage us to listen, to understand our roots, and to remember that the stories we tell ourselves shape our world.